गुड मॉर्निंग एंड वेलकम टू गनर शॉट। गनर शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। बिफोर आई स्टार्ट दिस टॉक अबाउट चाइना, आज यूएसए में प्रेसिडेंट या फॉर्मर प्रेसिडेंट ट्रम्प के ऊपर देयर वाज अ अटेम्प्ट एट assassination. He's escaped it. There are going to be repercussions, but we'll talk about it a little later because it's too early to think of what's uh, going to be the impact and all that. But interesting developments. We are living in interesting times and an interesting topic. Who's the stronger power? Who will be the stronger power in 2030? India or China? A very difficult question to answer uh, in one way. But for a normal person, it will be probably the easiest question to answer. People say, no, they say it has to be China. China has got such a great military power. Its economy is 5, 6 times India at this point of time. It will never catch up. All that they'll give me all mathematics, give me all figures to suggest that, and I would have probably agreed. In fact, I tend to agree also to some extent. But then two things happened, which got me thinking. I'm not going to give who's going to be the greater power by the end of this talk. I'm going to let you judge who's going to be the greater power. And what do you talk when you talk of power? What do you talk of? You know, what is power? So let me start. You know, I saw this article in South China Morning Post, कुछ दिन पहले. Very interesting article, and coming from China, it set me thinking. That like with pessimism in China and optimism in India, confidence seemed key to economic puzzle. So that said, look, uh, very I have not seen such an article coming out of China or written by any Chinese person who's talking of pessimism in China and optimism in India. Okay, he says it compares the different levels of confidence in China and India. And that's just before the third plenum is going to get underway. It's the confidence in the people, it's the confidence in the nation, it's in what the nation does. There's a hymn, there's a ding about and a resonance about India all over the globe, as much as there's a negative view about China all over. Well, this has been on for the past couple of years, but now I think it's making its mark felt. I thought, look, okay, let me see what do I do with this. When I came upon another uh, video, and what is this video all about? A very interesting video actually. This video is about which is ahead. It's about bridging Asia, China, India. Who will be ahead in 2030? Okay, this is by CNA. The interesting part of this video is this video was done in YouTube video. I put the link also out there. Those of you who want to see it, you can have a look at it. The interesting part of this video is this was done in 2013, not now, 2013, 10 years back, 11 years back. And how was this video done? It is a video of a debate. There was a debate in Singapore between two teams. Those two teams, each of the team had a Chinese and an Indian. One team of a Chinese, one Indian spoke for India. Another team of Chinese and Indian spoke for China. And then there was a team which was adjudicating both these teams. That also was composed of a Chinese and an Indian and a neutral, completely non-Chinese, non-Indian. A team, three adjudicated this debate. And then there was an audience. And there were four rounds of debate. And at the end of each round, there was an audience poll. And the views about what China was and what India was or would be by 2030 were put up. So this is they at that in 2013 they were assessing something which was to happen in 2030. So right, so 17 years ahead. This is an assessment taken. Now halfway through, a little more than halfway through. Now we are 11 years into this assessment, and we have a clearer picture as to what is happening. Right, and it's very interesting how this debate went. So what I'll do is I'll first show you the results of this debate stage by stage, and then I'll explain to you as to what the issues which were taken up for discussion, and we'll see those very issues now as they exist. Okay, and then I leave it to you to say who's going to be the bigger part. Okay, now the first thing, it's again, this is before the when the outset of the debate, at the outset of the debate, there was voting. When they voted, the thing was 53% of those who were allowed to vote in the debate said China will be ahead. 46% said India will be ahead. So China was clearly ahead. After the opening round, the first round, 50% said, 50.5% said China will be ahead, and 49.5% said India will be ahead. So it was marginal difference. After the next round of debate, 43.4% said China will be ahead, and 56% plus said India will be ahead. That's the difference. Slowly as issues got discussed, the change started happening. And by the next round, China was at 32.9%, India was at 67%. And by the last round, this is it. China was at just 30%, India was at 70%. Right. That's very interesting. As people kept talking, as people kept discussing about the various issues involved, the swing was in favor of India. Like I said, in that debate, there were two teams. Both teams had a Chinese and an Indian. Both teams argued, one for China, one for India. Right? And the adjudicating panel was a composite team of Chinese and Indian and a neutral, and the audience was also a mixture down the line, Indian and Chinese, but largely residing in Singapore. Now, what are the issues which were brought up? Who will be ahead? Naturally, things which were brought up were economic power, military power, uh, politics, uh, human rights, all these population, all these issues were brought up, which we normally talk of. And even at that point of time, even in 2013, right, um, you know, when this debate took place and the poll took place, China's GDP was about 4 to 5 times that of India because China had taken off by then, and nothing new. Their military power was far more than ours by then because they could afford it, and the military had started expanding. And this was the time when everything in China, everyone was confident. 2013 is a time when Xi Jinping took over. So China was at its peak. Everyone was gung ho about the whole story. And everyone said, look, Xi Jinping will take the reforms forward. And that was a time when, people were saying by 2030, China could be ahead of even USA. In such a mahal or in such a circumstance, I found it very interesting that 70% of in that debate voted for India, right? So then I said, okay, let me take all those items which were debated and see what is the state now, and then we'll take it forward. Then I leave it to you to take a call and assess for yourself what will be the outcome by 2030. Okay, let's not say 2030, but I'll give you enough trend lines to say let's say even by beyond 2030 up to 2040, who will be ahead. And I'll give you my views as I go along. Okay. The first thing is a country is made of people. That's what I always say. And in this case also, no difference. So I'm going to say the first matter is population. This is the population graph of India and China. You see that already India has overtaken China. And as we go along, the population is going to decrease. And this is irrevocable. And population of India is going to increase and it will peak out by 2060. So the first problem is that China will not have the population to support its rise anymore. In fact, the population will make China decline. This is an irrefutable fact. The population is aging, the working hands are reducing, not enough marriages, not enough babies. This is a thing which is internationally well known. It's a declining population. And when populations decrease, the GDP goes down, your economic goes down, everything goes down. It's well known fact that China is going to become old before it becomes rich, if at all it does. So if you look at it on this metric, India is a rising population. India might not be as rich as China. In average Indian might not be as rich as an average Chinese by 2030. But the net sum will not be of which will contribute to the GDP might not be different. So on additionally, the one child policy of China makes it very difficult for China to maintain a fully motivated voluntary PLA. So there's a problem. There's a huge problem in this. And this can't be discounted. In fact, in my way of looking at it, which I have analyzed many times, around 2030, you will start seeing social problems coming up in China. It's only 2024 now. Already, people in China are worried about this population decline. Certain social problems are coming up due to other reasons, and this will only magnify as we go along. So, if you look at population, I have no doubt in my mind the swing is completely to India. Okay, now let's look at the political system because these were the metrics which were discussed in 2013, not now in that debate. So I'm only saying what is it now. In fact, if you look at the population, what people discussed then is happening now. Look at the political system. China loses out on political issues very badly. But then in 2013, China's political system was largely reformist. People were thinking that reforms will go on, that uh, China will be a benign autocracy, or a benign communist nation where they're communist by party but capitalist by outlook. But that has changed, and everyone said down the in fact a few years back, and even then people said India's democracy is good, but it has issues. But today, when you look at it, I think the difference is huge. The difference is huge. Why? India's democracy has shown tremendous resilience, especially after the last uh, Lok Sabha elections, where we have a strong coalition in place today. We brought back a strong leader. You might agree with many of, or not, with the political party in power, but the political system which India has, where there is a clean transfer of power without any issues, and all issues are decided at the polls, makes India tremendously strong. We should have no doubts about it. And every time we feel that Indian democracy is bad, it comes up trumps again. And Indian democracy, over a period of time, has been able to throw up able leaders to guide the nation. Our democracy is chaotic. It has all kinds of loopholes. Many of our politicians are crooks. Many of politicians are illiterate. But somehow overall, the sum total of this, when you look back, India is the largest democracy in the world, and there are no two thoughts about it. Where even the poorest man has the right to put his point of view across, and it needs to be heard, because otherwise he'll throw you out after 5 years. Leaders who have not listened to the poorest man on the street have been thrown out. That's the strength of India. When you compare the communist China today, the way it is, especially after Xi Jinping has come and we've seen 10 years of Xi Jinping, right? When the debate took place in 2013, Xi Jinping had just stepped in. People felt that he will reform. But here, lo and behold, what in the past 10 years, Xi Jinping has carried out a revision of China's status. It is now a fully communist autocracy with state control, and it wants to go back to the days of Marx and Lenin and Mao. And you have a complete autocratic dictator who's at the helm for the third term. It's a one man, one party rule. And this might will not change. What you see is the governance model of China is getting tighter by the day. It's not, if any. Okay. Add to that, ever since Xi Jinping has come, the number of purges which he has carried out are phenomenal. People today are comparing Xi Jinping's China with Stalin's Russia. And this is signified by the fact that two defense ministers handpicked by him have been thrown out. And they've been thrown out of the Communist Party altogether. Even the primary membership has been cancelled. What will happen to them later, we'll see. A foreign minister who was handpicked by Xi Jinping, sent to USA, brought back as a foreign minister, has also been sacked. And the number of people who have been sacked are, I think, unprecedented, right? So, if you look at the political system, there's no two ways about it that India is far ahead. So, in terms of major factors, people and the political system, India is far ahead as far as and much stronger, much stronger. Okay, now let's look at the economics. The economy. I mean, let's have no doubt. At this point of the time, the Chinese have a stronger economy. They have a larger economy. I wouldn't say stronger economy, they have a larger economy. And this is a graph I brought out from the Japan Council of Economic Research. It's not by an Indian, it's not by a Western guy, it's not by the Chinese, it's by JCER. Now, what does this say? If you look, the one in the dark blue is China, the one in the hash is India, right? In 1990, both the economies were the same. By 2019, that is well before, I mean, a little after the previous, debate was carried out by CNA, you see that the Chinese economy has grown significantly, where the Indian economy has grown, but not much. But this is a projection up to 2060. And if you look at it, the Chinese economy and the Indian economy will be at par. I mean, after you go to 17, 18 trillion dollars, it's almost a no gap scenario. But we're not looking at 2060. We're looking at 2030, 40. So in terms of size, the Chinese economy will definitely be bigger by 2030, or rather will continue to remain bigger by 2030. And the Indian economy would have grown, but will not be as high as the Chinese or as big as the Chinese economy. It's a no brainer. If you look at it, if today the Chinese economy is 6 times bigger than the Indian economy, the, the projection is that even by 2030, the Chinese economy could be about 3 to 4 times that of the Indian economy. So, economy wise, the Chinese economy will continue to remain strong. That's the common projection. Why? Because of the growth rates. China is going to grow at 4 to 5% and India at 7 to 8%. And this is the projection overall. In fact, the view about China, 4 to 5% maybe in 25. After that, it's going to come down. By the time it's 2030, China would be growing at about 2 to 3%, is what the IMF and everyone say. But still, China will be a bigger economy. Will it be a stronger economy is the question. Will it be an economy which can withstand shocks? And that's the million-dollar question. I mean, when you do a forecasting, anything can happen. I mean, I have no doubt about it. But we have to look at certain things logically. Okay. The Indian economy, on the other hand, will go stronger by the day. On that, I have no doubt. Irrespective of which political party comes into power, the Indian economy will move. The Indian economy will move because the people of India are on the move. That's the important thing, right? So you're going to have a pretty strong economy with a set of people who are on the move and a lot of dynamism in the economy. India. You can't say the same thing about China. I spoke of social unrest because of a decline in population. I also spoke of uh, you know uh, issues related to their political system. If the political system of China continues the way it is, it's tough for the economy to continue its growth of 4 to 5%. If there's a change, the what Xi Jinping has done to Chinese economy is that he's stagnated it. And whenever he goes, there's no succession plan in view. No one can succeed. It is a party which will ensure succession. It will be a messy succession. And messy successions will impact their economy. And that is going to happen from now to 2030. So it's a question mark whether this big economy will be strong. In my opinion, it won't be. Okay. Now, what are the why? Why it'll not be so? Right? There are certain factors. There are fundamental factors which have shown their hand now, and those factors are not going to run away. And what are those factors? The first factor, as Bloomberg said, this heading is very important. I'll read it out closely. The, it talks of China property crisis is rippling through its biggest banks. So actually, what Bloomberg is saying is that there's a property crisis and a financial crisis. The property crisis is now very clear that the property bubble has deflated or burst, whichever way you look at it, and that is not going to revive for the next 8 to 10 years, well into 2030. And that's 30% of their economy, which is going to be sick. So, irrespective of however big the Chinese economy is by 2030, 30% of it will be sick. It will not generate further goodies for the nation or for whatever it is. And then they have a financial system which is in a bad shape. And if the financial system is in a bad shape, can the economy grow the way we think it was? If all was going well, fine, but all is not going well. And what's more important, the political economy of China is weak because Xi Jinping has got no, uh, you know, clue of how to take the economy forward. And I'm going to talk of this on 16th or 15th, 16th, when the third plenum gets underway on 15th. So I'll do an analysis of the current state of the Chinese economy. And by then I'll get an idea of what the third plenum talks of because that's about economy. And we can analyze it with the current status of the economy and what's going ahead and Xi Jinping's past. His track record in economic management has been poor, whether it's dual circulation or new productive forces or whatever it is. Okay. So, if Xi Jinping continues, there's going to be a problem. Even if it doesn't continue, there's going to be a problem in their economy. Okay. So, you got to look at the property which is going to be in a problem by 2030. The financial system, if the property doesn't recover, the financial system doesn't recover. If the financial system doesn't, for both to recover, you need a good man at the helm, which is Xi Jinping, who's not a good man at the helm. Okay. This is the thing about 2 days back of economists. He says why Chinese banks are now vanishing. And this is a tweet I saw, right? And this might be a little exaggerated by Francois Gautier, where he says Chinese banking sector has just imploded. 40 banks disappeared in 1 week. China faces a silent banking crisis that will shake the global economy. Small Chinese banks are falling one after the other. Okay, we are talking of about 55 billion yuan of assets at risk. This is a fact. It's at this point of time, you look at the Economist report and you look at this tweet and a few other things which are coming out. Small banks in China are failing. People are out on the streets. Videos are there in social media demanding their money back, and there is no solution for it. And people are not investing in it. What they've invested, they're not getting back. So people are worried. So, what I spoke of, the declining population, social unrest, political thing is going to compound as we go along. And if there's no solution for this, there's no political solution for this is going to enlarge. The financial mess is going to enlarge. The local government debt is going to enlarge. For the past 2 years, I've been studying the Chinese economy. I have not had a very clear idea of where Chinese economy is going, except down. Okay. There are other indicators. Everyone says that, for China to recover economically, there needs to be consumption. But consumption is not taking place in China. And there's this opinion in South China Morning Post why India could soon dethrone China as the world's top consumer market. And this is very interesting. So, on a comparative scale, India is going to continue and become the biggest consumer. Is it going to be the biggest market, the bigger market? This doesn't come from me. It comes from South China Morning Post. Even if it doesn't become the biggest, the future market is India. So you will see inflow here. If the future market is in India and people have to decouple from China, right? It'll take they'll where will they go? China plus one. The plus one, a large part of plus one is India. The part where decoupling and relocating had to go to Vietnam and Bangladesh and all done. In fact, Bangladesh is dead and finished as far as I'm concerned on that issue. There are other issues. Size. So they have to be India. So India will continue getting FDI. India will continue increasing its manufacture because the world needs India. And the world needs India not only for manufacturing, the world needs India for consuming. And India also needs to consume to go ahead. And this is something, this analysis comes from China. So your consumption is not going to act down, which means your economy has to grow up. Whereas China's economy will not be strong. I'm not said it will decline, so it will not be strong. It might be a big economy, it will not be strong. Of course, the period from 2030 to 2040 is going to be decisive, but I've already said that earlier. But I'll talk of it later in detail as we go along. And then there's this article which came out. He says, will China's economy continue to benefit from, will India's economy continue to benefit from China's own goals? When I said, look, what is this article all about? I read this in a little detail. He says Wall Street is talking of India's emergence as a key engine of global economic growth and high hopes for Modi's third term. On Xi's watch, China's self inflicted wounds from zero COVID chaos to the tech crackdown have only added to the Indian appeal. And this again is from an opinion from South China Morning Post. So there are voices within China which say India is going to consume more, people are going to shift more to India, and India's appeal will go up. So, very clearly, the Indian economy is on a very strong ascendant, whereas the Chinese economy is on shaky footing. I mean, let's talk of something which is political in nature, but economic also in nature. For the past 5 to 10 years, in fact, for the past 20 years, people have spoken about the collapse of China often. And people said China doesn't collapse. I agree. China might not collapse, it will not collapse, it will just deflate. But the fact is, why do people talk of the collapse of China? Because they have doubts about the Chinese model overall. Has anyone spoken of collapse the of India? India is chaotic, India is corrupt, India is useless, India has no infrastructure, X, Y, Z. But does has anyone spoken of collapse of India? No. So if you look at the political economy and the larger economy and the hardcore, look at it from any point of view, you will see that India holds its ground very strongly economically up to 2030. Beyond that, it will shoot up. Right? Yes, China is investing tremendously in technology, which is far ahead of India, and India will not catch up with China by 2030. I have no doubt about it. Because we don't have the technological bent of mind in the government. The government has to push technology, which it is not. In China, all things aside, the government has pushed technology. If there is one saving grace for China, it is technology. If technology were not there the way it is in China, then the collapse of China is imminent. But, well, give China its due, you will see by 2030, China will still be ahead of India technologically, and we have to catch up. Right. Then there's the issue of trust. Now, trust is an important factor in any setup. And this tells you very clearly, do people do people trust China or India better? And this graph by Lowy Institute of Australia puts things across squarely. If you look at this graph, Russia and China have the maximum distrust. 43% feel China cannot be trusted at all, and another 40% feel not very much. So China is in the red by 80%. Sure, India is not the most trusted nation, but overall, trust factor in India has reduced. If you looked at this chart, say maybe in 2013, it might have been the other way around. Trust in India might have been still there. The trust in China would be far lesser. So, trust wise, China has gone down. And if this is the trend line, trust is very difficult. Trust is a very difficult quantity to build. The world trusted China, and today it has stopped trusting China. And going ahead in the next 6 years, I don't know, I don't think there will be any factor which will make the world trust China. If that isn't so, China won't be a great power. Okay, now look at it from another point of view. Very recently, the our prime minister went to Russia. So here's this cartoon. Both USA and China are worried about the Russia-India, friendship. So Russia today, I mean India today has good equations with Russia and USA. In fact, I did a program 3 days back with Mr. Sri Iyer, which puts India as almost a balancing power in the global affairs. And this strength will only go up. Contrast this with this. What does uh, China feel about this whole story? The Chinese are angry that why West isn't outraged enough by Modi meeting Putin, which means they're worried about India gaining international status and they're not being recognized. That's a fallout of the lack of trust. They are expressing their issues. And China had two great allies, North Korea and Pakistan. Now, North Korea is slowly making room to accommodate Russia. Recently, Putin and Kim Jong un did a deal. Part of the deal, as it's coming out, is that the Korean TV, which was so far dependent on the Chinese satellite, is now shifted to a Russian satellite. So you see Korea shifting away. If you thought of Pakistan, which is the next major ally of China, Pakistan and the American army are doing exercises in Pakistan, not Chinese army. So the two allies are also, making way out. And there's a large section within Pakistan which feels that they're been debt trapped by China. Well, the reality could be something else. They don't like China. So in international relations, China is left with very few friends. In fact, only Russia, and Russia is a transactional friend, the way I look at it. And recently, and this is 2 days back, Sheikh Hasina was in China. She cancelled her trip and came back. And this is going to find reverberation all around. All the small countries will now think twice about China. If Bangladesh can be treated so badly by China, why not others? And then, in contrast, there's something else which India is doing. India has reopened the Tibet chapter, and I'll talk of it later. I'll talk of what we're going to do in Tibet. We are responding to Taiwan, and right, we are building dams in Arunachal Pradesh, to which China has objected, but that doesn't won't stop us because we are planning to spend about $1 billion dollars to construct hydro projects in Arunachal. Right now, all this signifies that China's heft is reducing. That India has the strategic confidence to say that I'm going to invest $1 billion in Arunachal. You look at it. China has today got a problem with Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, India, and Russia. Something which it did not have in 2013. It's international with neighbors. It doesn't have good relations. And neighbors, by virtue of China's actions, have armed themselves. Their military posture has been upgraded. They don't trust China. And this is what the Pew report says. Majorities in many Asia Pacific countries surveyed are concerned about China's territorial disputes and they're arming themselves. Okay. So, overall, you see that international relations of China have gone down, whereas the international relations have gone up. And the baseline is 2013 as per that debate which took place in Singapore. So, there's a big change. In 2013, all this was not factored in. Despite all this not being factored in, the fact that China was at that point of time at the peak of its capabilities, taking into consideration that China will continue to progress the way it did at that point of time, people still felt that China was strong, India was stronger. They gave 70% to India and 30% to China. And like I said, in both teams of India and China, there was an Indian and a Chinese. The jury was a composite team. The audience was composite. If you compare China's state in 2013, you compare China's state now in 2024, definitely all these factors have gone down. The only factor which has gone up is technology. Okay. Now let's talk of military power. Look at this article by Eurasian Times. I wrote it. I'm showing my own article to all of you. There are six major problems in China as far as military power is concerned. It has new leaders always because they get sacked. It has new people because PLA soldiers only serve for 2 years. It has always new equipment which is now proving to be defective, as I discussed with General Narayanan some time back. It has got new roles which it never had, new organizations because organizations are being made and broken. Around 2013-14, the information support force was a great force, but now it's gone down. It's broken and into two. And then it has got new roles. So if you see about everything, is PLA a competent force enough to fight and win wars for China? Big question mark. Also take into account that it has never not won a single war, not even fought a single war from 1979, the Vietnam War, which it lost. Lack of experience, compounded by all this sacking of generals, poor equipment. Even yesterday, one of the rockets, which was to carry their satellites, failed. Yesterday and the day before. So, overall, if you see, the military power of China is huge but questionable, right? This is what comes out of China. China military was to get back into line after defense minister's downfall. But there's another point. The state-owned defense firms are now pledging to take action against corruption. Why are they pledging? Because Xi Jinping feels that they are corrupt and he's purged them also. And this is reflected in many of the failures of their defense equipment. So you find PLA is huge and it will grow bigger by 2030. I have no doubt about it. But will it be stronger? Big question mark. What about India? We all know that India is got a smaller army, Technologically, it is weaker, but it has got a strong tradition. It has got strong manpower. It has got strong capability to win and fight in its terrain. And this is acknowledged by the PLA. By 2030, the way our infrastructure is going, the way we are putting money into defense, we will be pretty strong. Already there are indications of this. If you look at North Arabian Sea, the PLA, which has a base in Djibouti, is sitting inside Djibouti and doing nothing either against Houthis or against the pirates. Whereas the Indian Navy has been active there. And if you think the Houthis will not touch China, they might not touch Chinese flag carriers. But there are a lot of flags which take Chinese goods. And those flags are not necessarily, friendly with Houthis, and they'll be targeted. If that happens, Chinese exports will go down further. It will get hit. It is in China's interest to keep the Red Sea channel open, but it is not doing so. In Philippines, it has come up against a determined lot of issues where its claims on those islands have now come into question, and they're being relooked or revisited globally. And China is struggling to maintain its hold there. So, militarily also, you find that as we keep growing, as by 2030, India will be strong. PLA will be a bigger force, but will it be stronger is a question mark. Right? So, I've outlined to you all these issues. I've outlined to you the the declining factors of China are population, where India scores, the political system, there's it's a hands down victory to India as against China. The economy, China will be a huge economy by 2030, but probably a sick economy. And there are questions about the size of the economy because some of the GDP figures are questionable. On the other hand, India will continue to grow and will be a strong economy where people will be on the verge of a takeoff somewhere between 2030 and 2035. A transformation is going to happen. And on that, I have no doubts. Equally, IMF, World Bank, and the West will have no doubt because they need India. And then the political economy and the political system of, you combine the economy with this, you see that cocktail is heavily skewed in the favor of India. And you take the other issues, which I've said, whether you call it health, you call it financial system, you call it everything, except technology. India is going to be very competitive or better than China. And overall, democracy will succeed. And militarily, I think we are at par with China already. And as we go along, we're going to be stronger. Now, this is my view. I've laid out the facts as they have come, as they have appeared factuals. You take a call who's going to be stronger. My own view, my view. I am not asking you to follow my view or endorse my view. You're free to say no and we'll debate it logically. My own view, by 2030, India would have edged ahead. And beyond 2030, we will be the stronger nation. In fact, if I look at it, even now we are the stronger nation. As a nation, we are stronger than China for many reasons. Despite the fact that we have problems, despite the fact that we have not been able to solve Kashmir completely, we have a festering wound in Manipur, there are other issues, there are problems of center state relations, there are problems of everything. And but we will cope with them because we are a democracy. Can China cope with them? Very doubtful. How can a country which purges so many leaders regularly progress? What is going to be the outcome of the financial mess they are in? Is there a silver lining at the end of this cloud? I don't see it. Is there any policy which is coming out which is overturn this? I don't see it. And their economy and everything, like I said, when the third plenum is on 15th, which is 2 days away, as I get the first views of what said in the first plenum, I'll show you what's said in the first plenum and what is the actuality, the figures on the ground, and do the policies meet? And I doubt they'll meet. Right. So I finished putting across to you whatever I had to about who's going to be the stronger nation, India or China, by 2030. You take a call on whatever I've said. So I'll answer some questions now. And at the outset, I'd like to thank Big Texan. Why does India not decouple economically from China? Look, it's not a matter of India not wanting to decouple from China or anyone. This coupling has taken place over a period of 25 to 30 years. And it will take time for this decoupling. In between, you will see a certain amount of increase in dependency on China. And let's not discount that China has a very strong manufacturing base. These days, I'm in USA. I'm going to get back next week. What do I see? I see a whole lot of products here which are made in China and brought in. So that dependency won't go away from USA. Until that dependency won't go away from big countries like USA, China's economy will not collapse. Right. Having said this, this has happened over a period of 30 years. Same thing has happened in India. Let me give you an example. In between 1990 and 2000, we were self-sufficient for API. What is API? Active pharmaceutical ingredients, which are the basic ingredients which are required for our pharma industry. The Chinese came in with lower prices. They undercut the prices. And everyone went in to take that part of globalization and everything. So our pharma industry started depending on China. As a result, our own API industry collapsed completely. Finished. When the API industry finished, China started jacking up their prices. And what did we do? We didn't mind it because our pharma industry had firmed in by then. Despite the jacking up of prices by China, we just offloaded those prices onto recipient countries and pushed it out. They were still cheaper than many other countries from which other countries could go. Our exports kept going up. So now you're largely dependent on China for your API. So you can't decouple. And pharma industry is a earning industry for us. There's a step by the government to reconstruct our API industries. But that's going to take 10 years. Same thing for other places, electronics and whatever, heavy machinery. You have to take time. Even if after taking time, we, my opinion is that you don't have to completely decouple economically from China 100%, like a Cold War. Even if you reduce your import from China by about 30 to 40% over the next 5 years, you'll be okay. You will not have the dependency on China. At this point of time, we have dependency on China, and that's a weakness for us. Well, by 2030, if we can get rid of this, we'll be very strong. Gautam, thanks a lot for your contribution. I'll I'll get back to your question a little later. Uh, he's talking of Fun is talking of Donald Trump's assassination. I said I'm acknowledging the question. We'll talk of it later. Okay. Yeah. By 2030, Indian economy will around 7 to 8 trillion. Possible. My own assessment, we should hit the 10 trillion mark, because at some point a multiplicating factor will come in, which will start driving our economy exponentially. Right? It will happen. That's how it is. Right. Ajay, General Sir, brilliant. You have mastered the art of outdoing yourself in your analysis. At this rate, I will never get. Oh, thanks a lot. But this is just normal thinking. It is just not something. It actually, I must thank and then I acknowledge CNA, right, Central News Asia, for that program. It just came to me and I opened it and I found, actually, for about 4 days I kept seeing just the first 2 3 minutes, but one day I opened it and read through it, and I whole thing came through very clearly to me, and that's why I thought I must take this out, do this analysis. What I'd request all of you is, if you like this analysis, please press the like button and share this video with others. Also, uh, if you're a first time listener to Gunner Shot, subscribe to Gunner Shot. You'll help me. And I would request more of you to join Gunner Shot as members. And I've been telling you, whatever you contribute to Gunner Shot is for a good cause, and not for me. It is for a few girls whom I'm trying to educate. How does people of China view Emperor Z? Like, dislike, hate, revert, etc.? They like him. To be very honest, a few years back, in an opinion poll, 90% of the people of China vouched for Xi Jinping. Well, that's his leadership capability, that he's got the Chinese people on his side. But will that continue? Because in the past 2 to 3 years, such news has not been coming out. But before that, it was even up to 90% acceptance. They used to call him Dada Z, that means Uncle Z or Grandfather Z, whatever it was. But that might change as days go by. The NATO jet trainer crash was 100 kilometers from Kaliningrad, but I suspect Chinese satellite. Let us see. I think it was. It's too premature to talk of all this. Is there a premature? Is there a possibility to split China like the USSR? Will US Tibet bill have any impact? What will be the global order with weak China? Yeah, very good questions. China splitting with USSR will happen, a matter of time. It might not be a split as much as it might be a cooling off of the relationship. Maybe 4 years, 5 years, right? This, as it is, there are issues which have started coming up about this relationship. I've shown one about North Korea. There are issues regarding Central Asia. There are issues regarding territorial disputes. which were earlier hidden, but they are now coming out. There are issues where Russia was completely sidelined in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit held recently. So at this point of time, there'll be no split, but 2 years, 1 year, 2 years down the line, anybody's guess. The US Tibet bill will not have a great impact unless India gets into the act. Let me be very blunt about it. The first comment was from a Tibetan individual who thanked me for putting the issues about Tibet out. I'll put it out again based on this US Tibet bill. My view is that India has to get into the act, and how it will get into the act and why it should get into the act, we'll discuss in a separate episode. That's a separate episode I have to do, and I'll do it within a week. What will be the global order with a weak China? Yeah, you'll see a, a global order where USA will remain the big pole. There's no doubt, but it will be multipolar. There's a problem with USA also. While USA will be economically strong, there's a problem with Russia. What happened today in USA with the assassination of Trump, who's already 78 plus, Biden 80 plus, they have a problem of leadership. So how, and there are a lot of knots in USA. How USA will come out of its knots is important. China will be weakening. We don't know what will happen in Russia in a post-Putin scenario and in a post-Ukraine war scenario. Right now, Russia is riding high, but once the Ukraine war finishes, who knows? So there will be issues. Very unpredictable. But one thing I know that India's graph will go up. Accepted that Pakistan beyond is beyond an iota of trust. Similarly, can China be trusted ever for border talks failed miserably and China going back? No, you can never trust China. I showed you the graph on China. We have trusted enough of China and burnt our fingers. We are now need to act, as simple as that. And we need to transfer the energy back to China. Or rather, we have to act. So far, China has been acting in our court. We need to act in their court. What is acting in their court? We'll talk. Right. If China is significantly weakened by 2035, will USA shift to opposing India? Is that a reason for strengthening India Russia? No, that will not happen because the reason why India China Russia, US Russia sorry US China relations have gone bad, and why whole thing is because China has a lot of issues, which I've explained why things have gone bad. It's not because of their relationship with US, but China's own government and XYZ. That is not the case with India. So that will not happen. Don't worry. Yeah. Need to analyze Chinese technology impact after AI revolution. Who is better? Yeah, we'll do it. I'm not saying so. China will be the stronger power in 2030 because one Indian army cutting down manpower. India's defense budget is very slow, 2% of GDP economic. Yeah, that's a view. I'll take it. Let's see how it goes. I have every faith in the ability of India and those non-Indian citizens who are of Indian heritage being supported fully in every field. Stakes are very high. I agree. So you will have different. I have no problem. Democracy है भाई कुछ भी बोलो. Agree. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Uh, Thanks a lot for your views, Hiranmai. So nice of you. Honored. Yeah, I go with it. Like he said, like, gonna short, comment, ask questions, get answered. Thank you. That's my whole view. You ask any question, I answer every question in the comment, if you noticed. Right. Uh, okay. Yeah, this is you're talking of the Sterlite plant, which was done in 2017-18. I'll talk of it someday because this plant, the whole thing, is a sorry episode. There's a problem which we didn't solve. The center and state were not in one page. Uh, the center, the state, and the locals were not on one page. The net result was we closed the plant down. Till then, we were net exporters of copper. After closing that plant down, we became net importers of copper, and from where? China. A lot of problems. Is there a China dependency on India so that India can have some leverage? No, we don't have. They managed it well. Granted to them. Yeah, Sundranchu was resolved after 70 years, 8 years of similar standoff. When China backed off in 1993, when USA became the sole power and China lost its leverage of helping USA if war with USA. Yes, sir. Look, don't worry. This will all get resolved. Uh, it's not a issue from my side. We'll resolve our problems with China on this issue because as we are strengthening, they will come back to terms with us. Uh, Sir, not compare India with China. You cannot challenge in a superpower. Fine, you do what you want. China is loved from almost all. I don't know whether you're right. Okay, I don't. In fact, I don't think you're right. But you have opinion. Please keep it with yourself. Sir, can I ask you a question about structure of Gorkha regiment? Hiranmai, ask this question during open hour. I'll answer this. Right? Okay. Uh, I think we're finished with all the questions. Thanks a lot. Look, why does India want to be a superpower? Just stay a regional power and net security. I'm not for one moment saying India will be a superpower. We are not interested in being a superpower. We are interested in being a regional power and a good power. I'm only comparing India and China by 2030. So that means you have a lot to develop. We have a lot of ifs and buts in the whole story. But that's part of the deal, right? Okay. So we finished with all the questions. Thanks a lot. Uh, Later in the evening, we're going to talk of the Kargil war from through a Kargil veteran. Okay. So I would request all of you to join in. Someone who's fought in Kargil, who's been decorated in Kargil, and he was commanding a regiment in Kargil, a very good friend of mine. So we'll talk about him later in the evening at 8 o'clock. Thank you, morning, and have a great day.